So
That was just me.
got it. Yep. Yes, the guests will follow hosts to different companies, even if the facilities and the rewards and the
Aren't as good.
programs are not as good.
Yeah.
Right.
And that's really interesting because then if that research really takes off, you can partner with some HR people to talk about how to keep those best employees, because that's such a big difference between what you see in casinos and what you see in regular hotels or resorts or anything else. People don't really follow the person.
Precisely. And I think this is directly applicable to many other service relationships, like, right? So what is the relationship between a therapist and a patient? What is the relationship between a teacher and a student? What is the relationship between a coach and an athlete? I'll give you another example. I guarantee you that there are more people who will follow their hairstylist to another salon than they will stay at the salon once the stylist leaves.
Oh, certainly.
Right.
In fact, I just saw a bunch of people talking on Facebook. There was a doctor who left her clinic and joined another one, and they were torn because they're like, we hate the clinic she joined, but we want to stay with the doctor. So how do we reconcile these differences? So yeah, I think that's a great service relationship that probably hasn't been explored as much. So that's really cool.
Yeah, it's been fun so far.
Awesome. Well, we are now on time. Thank you for letting me talk about research. I always love hearing what's going on with people and what research they're doing. So welcome to our class, James. Thank you so much for coming. We really appreciate it. I know how busy you are. You have a lot going on. I'm so excited for you to be here. I'm really excited because we're also in the future going to be offering a revenue management class. So most students haven't gotten a real taste of it yet. We're just starting to introduce that. So I love that perspective that you're bringing, but also this leadership and this just pursuit of constant betterment through education, through your job, through life. And I think that's a great part of leadership. So to get us started, I'm going to read your short bio from last time, and then I will let you take it from there. So James Larsen is a Vice President of Revenue Management for Caesars Entertainment, which is the largest gaming company in the world. His portfolio includes over 30 properties and 23,000 hotel rooms across North America. Within revenue management, his team is responsible for pricing and forecasting as they relate to hotel rooms, restaurant, food and beverage, pools and cabanas, spas, retail operations, group business, catering, and gaming. Outside of pricing and forecasting, James's team oversees distribution, IT system development, and direct marketing offers. Before joining Caesars in 2014, James's professional experience included revenue management for the Waldorf Astoria in New York City, event planning for the Yale Club of New York City, and several consulting engagements with hospitality companies in Southeast Asia. He holds a BA in linguistics from Yale, an MA in linguistics from the University of Florida, an MBA from WGU. Where is that?
Western Governors University.
Okay. And a Master of Hospitality Management from Cornell. He is currently a PhD student in the hotel administration at UNLV. And outside of his professional and academic pursuits, James is an avid baker, a marathon runner, and a board member of nonprofit organizations that improve the lives of the LGBTQ plus members of the Las Vegas community. All right, thanks, James.
Sure, thank you. Wow, I've got a lot to live up to apparently here. Okay, so let me go ahead and share the screen so you can see. Oh, I can't share the screen. It's been disabled. Maybe if the host enables it, we'll get that happening. But what I'm going to talk about today specifically is leadership in the realm of revenue management as it pertains to food and beverage operations specifically. Why food and beverage operations? Because so many more people are familiar with restaurants than they are with the ins and outs of hotels work. So that's why going to be talking about this from a food and beverage perspective primarily here. Thank you for enabling screen sharing, Professor. All right, let's do this. Okay, you already gave my background. There you go. That's it. We did add one more area of responsibility to our to my team's priorities, because we talked about hotels and spas and food and beverage and all that sort of thing. We also recently added sports books too, because Caesars, we now have Caesars Sports, enabling online betting for all of our Caesars Rewards guests, depending on jurisdiction. But the Caesars Sportsbook app is something that we are all about now too. Okay. All right, here is our agenda for the day. The first thing I'm going to do is give you a high level view of what revenue management is. Then I'm going to talk about three projects that we have worked on within revenue management. I'm going to talk about dynamic pricing at Bacchanal Buffet. Talk all about Bacchanal. It's wonderful. I just had lunch there yesterday with a few new team members. Second project we'll talk about is table mix optimization. So this is how we determined the size of the tables that were appropriate at our Nobu restaurant in Las Vegas. And finally, I'll talk about what we've done beyond hotel rooms and food and beverage, specifically in the realm of cabanas and day beds, because that is a large and sizable market for our guests when they come and visit us in Las Vegas and at our many properties throughout the US here. And just so you know, within this PowerPoint presentation right now, it's skipping around forward because there are issues going on with my office. So if you see me skipping ahead and coming back, it's under control. But if there is a problem, just speak up and we'll be all good here. All right. So first off here, what is revenue management specifically? The reason why I'm starting here by talking about what revenue management is because whenever you are engaging with another party, so from one department to another or from one team member to another, you want to understand what the other person's goals are. What is it that that person is looking to achieve, and how does that person define success? Moreover, what is it that that person does to achieve those sorts of goals? Why is this a leadership lesson? It's because when when two parties are working together toward a common goal, they're going to accomplish a lot more together. That's an example of being able to help someone else accomplish their goals, and how someone else can help you accomplish what it is that you do, right? Leadership is really about working together in a collaborative environment here, all right? So here's what we do within revenue management. And once you understand our goals, you can get into what other teams' goals are too. All right, so revenue management as a discipline, what it is that we do is we leverage space and time to generate profit. All right. Space and time that sounds science fiction-y, sounds like Doctor Who, right? What I mean by space and time is that each component, each experience that we sell within a resort environment has those two factors associated with it, space and time. For example, in a hotel room, the space that you're selling is the actual room, that square footage, right? That is the physical space. The time component is generally a night, because we sell rooms based on a night, right? So the space and time component for hotels would be rooms and nights. Let's think about a restaurant. Now, in restaurants, of course, we sell food, we sell beverage, we sell drinks, we sell a whole bunch of different things. We can only sell based on the space and time that each guest occupies. So the space in a restaurant environment would be the seat or the physical environment that that person is occupying. And the time is generally going to be an hour, all right? So the space and time factors that we use in the restaurant environment would be seats per hour. Hotels, rooms per night. Restaurants, seats per hour. So it's all about understanding that dynamic between space and time, okay? Now, the goal of revenue management is to maximize total property EBITDA. EBITDA is another way of saying profit. It's another way of saying net revenue. EBITDA stands for earnings before interest, tax, depreciation, and amortization. The important part to understand about that metric, EBITDA, is that we are only interested in accounting for what it is that we can control as an organization. We can control revenue and we can control expenses. We can't control the I, T, D, and A. The interest, that's an external force. Tax, that's an external force. Depreciation is an external force, and amortization is an external force. We can mold and shape them to some extent, but we really can't control them in the same way that we can selling for revenue and also managing the expenses in terms of our cost. All right. So the goal is to maximize the total property's EBITDA, not just the hotel, not just the gaming floor, not just the restaurants, everything in its entirety to get to one number as large as it can be. How do we achieve that goal? We achieve that goal primarily through the 5 pillars of revenue management, which means that we sell the right product to the right customer for the right price at the right time through the right channel. All right. Now, not all of this has to make complete sense to you right now. The point of sharing all of this is to give you some insight into what it is that our team does within revenue management and what it is that we can apply according to the principles of revenue management in other areas, specifically within food and beverage today. All right. So my team's goal, maximize total property EBITDA. That's it. Whenever we're working with someone, we say over and over again, our mission is to maximize total property EBITDA. Where do our goals align here so that we can achieve the best result we can? Making sense so far? All right, I see some head nodding, so that's good. It's a good sign. And whenever you want to ask a question here or ask for clarification, happy to do it. All right. Specifics about RM in a hotel environment. Rooms sold will get you to occupancy, and the selling price will get you to the average daily rate, which is essentially the average price that people are paying. Now, high occupancy does not necessarily lead to more revenue, and a high ADR, high prices, do not necessarily lead to more revenue either. If you have a 100-room hotel and you sell all 100 rooms, great, but if you only sold them for $1, that's not a lot of revenue. On the other side, if you have, again, the same 100-room hotel and you sell your rooms for $1,000 a piece and you only sell one of them, again, that high ADR isn't necessarily needing to high revenue. It's finding the balance between the two to maximize the amount of revenue coming in that get you to the best result possible. So it's not always about moving more units. It's not always about increasing price. They have to be in concert with each other, working towards the same goal. So in this vein, there are only 3 ways to increase revenue. You can increase the number of rooms you sell, you can increase the ADR, or you can do both. Generally, the winning strategy is to do both here. Okay. All right. That is a brief view of what we do in revenue management. Now for the exciting stuff, talking about the actual examples here. All right. First one, Bacchanal Buffet. So Bacchanal Buffet is a restaurant that we have at Caesar's Palace in Las Vegas, and it's considered to be one of the top buffets in the country. According to the New York Post, it's the #1 buffet in the country. According to USA Today, it's the #1 buffet in Las Vegas. And Thrillist has called Bacchanal the standard against which all Las Vegas buffets are judged. I was there yesterday for dinner with my team, and let me say, I loaded up on shrimp, crab legs, lobster, and various pastries. Still the best meal in town in terms of buffet. Love it. It's a lot of fun. All right. So I'm going to open this up for discussion right now. How many covers do you all think Bacchanal serves each year? Start off at 100,000. Raise your hand if you think Bacchanal does 100,000 covers or more each year. A cover is the equivalent of a guest coming in. So 100,000 covers or more. All right. See a few there. Okay. All right. Keep them up if you think it's 250,000 or more. Yeah, it is, Gina. Okay, Gina. All right. You're okay. You think it's 250,000 or more? I like it. Okay. Are you going to keep your hand up, Gina, if I say 500,000 or more? No, that's where you draw the line. All right, that's where you draw the line. Okay. Anyone else out there think it's 500,000 or more?
I was honestly thinking it would be closer to 1 million.
You think it's closer to 1 million? All right. More than 750,000? Could be. More than 1 million? Ooh. In 2019, we did over 1 million, 1,030,000 covers. That's a lot, right? Now, that doesn't just happen. That requires an entire team of people, right? It also requires 25,000 square feet of buffet and dining space. about 171 tables that can seat about 650 people at a time. So 650 chairs across 171 different tables, 9 kitchens producing more than 500 dishes per day, and over 200 front of house and back of house employees scheduled per day. Per day. On any given day, we'll have more than 200 people working over at Bacchanal. It's a lot, right? So how is it that a little team like revenue management can work with another team that is just so huge here? Well, it all comes back down to this idea. This is what revenue management and the food and beverage operation management at Bacchanal would talk about. What strategies would you implement to generate additional revenue in a restaurant or a buffet? So let's open this up here. What do you all think? What are some of the things you could do to increase revenue at a place like Bacchanal? You can take yourselves off mute and contribute to the discussion here whenever you're ready. I would love to hear your ideas.
24 hours, probably do a happy hour.
24 hours and happy hour. Okay, talk more about that one. So remember, it's increase units sold, increase price, or do both. So let's get into your idea a little bit more here. Go for it.
What I was thinking of about it, or I'm confused.
Yeah, talk about it some more. What were you thinking about?
So I was thinking if you go 24 hours and then like you can increase customers to come more maybe during a happy hour, because I know that there's certain times during the operation of 24 hours that it's going to be your high point and your low point. So maybe find out what the happy medium is and then pick a time for happy hour, kind of like what Sonnet did.
Okay. And by doing that, Gina, you're saying that we're going to increase the units sold, right? Because you're going to decrease the price by doing something like a happy hour, right?
Yes.
Okay, got it. So you want to increase the hours of operation and encourage people to come during times when there might otherwise be lulls. That's what happy hour is, right?
Yes.
All right, Gina, I like that one. Let's add that one onto our list of possible improvements here. What other ideas do we have? We can increase units sold, we can increase price, or we can do both. You've all got a magic wand. You can do whatever it is that you want to do in Bacchanal. Let's keep it going. Gina got us started off well here. Liz, it looks like you're thinking there. I can see you on screen, Miss Gurley. What is going on in that mind of yours? How are you going to increase revenue at Bacchanal? You know what? Yeah, just talk us through. Go ahead.
I don't know. My wheels are turning. I'm thinking. So I'll get back with you in a minute.
You want to get back? Okay, Rosemary, you're smiling here. Tell us what's going on in that head of yours.
Well, I was thinking that compared to, I think, some of the restaurants that we have worked at in the past, this is way above some of our experiences.
That is totally reasonable. And the lessons that you learn in working in other restaurants can still be applicable. So what are some of those ideas? Let's talk about how we can scale them to something like that. You've got good ideas here, Rosemary. Let's hear them.
Well, so my only restaurant experience is with Panera Bread. And so they do like new menu items and rotate them quarterly. But obviously this is a buffet style, so you already have endless meal options. So I'm not really sure how that would work.
We can still, we do 500 dishes a day, but the 500 dishes in the summer don't have to be the same as the 500 dishes in winter. And breakfast doesn't have to be the same as lunch, and that doesn't have to be the same as dinner. So what you're saying, we could definitely make here. We can make that work here, Rosemary. That's a good idea. Different offerings to get different people in. Sure. I like it. Sloan, you took yourself off mute here. So, and
Yeah.
Liz, I know you did too. So we'll come back to you, Liz, because we want to hear that one too. All right, go ahead, Sloan.
Well, it was kind of similar to Rosemary and doing like weekly specials or doing like Sunday brunch with bottomless mimosas or something. You're not making money on the mimosas, but you're making money on people coming.
Okay. So what tactic does that fall into? Did we increase units sold, increase price, or do both?
Units sold.
We did so with mimosas, we would increase units sold because we have more drinks going out, and we're probably increasing the average check as well because we're adding mimosas onto it. So yeah, you'd be doing both there. Exactly. That's not a mimosa you're drinking right now, probably. But if it were, we'd be charging you for it, and that'd be an upsell, right? Okay. All right. I like that. I like that, Sloan. All right, Liz. We primed the pump here. We're ready to hear it.
Now, it's kind of like what Rosemary said. Like, I worked at Chick-fil-A for a while, and like in the fall, they have like soups that are added to their menu, and people are more likely to go that. And then, like in the wintertime and even like the summertime, they do different like milkshakes. So, I know like they do like a peach shake in the summertime, but that generates a lot more revenue for them because they charge like a little bit more for those seasonal menu items.
Yep.
It obviously gets more people to come, but it also increases the revenue that they get like during that peak season. And then also, like for instance, Miss Mary Bobo's in Lynchburg. Like, I work at Jack Daniel's Distillery, and like it used to be a boarding house, which is now a restaurant, but it's like a Lazy Susan style. And it was before like the pandemic, like $20 a person. And obviously they went up to like $25 or $30 a person, but they do like special holiday meals. And like every Friday they have like meatloaf and fried chicken, but they generate their revenue from like the special menu items that they have, and the more likely that they are to get guests that come in just because of like those seasonal menu items. And they sell a lot more, and they also obviously make more money during that time. So I think that would be a great way, is if you did something a little different in a restaurant than, say, obviously like your competitors, is what you would have to do to attract more people to come and generate more revenue.
Yeah, absolutely. You know, like in November, we can start saying it's a fall celebration. There's pumpkin pie at the dessert buffet instead of things like pineapple upside down cake. Sure, yeah, all that sort of thing. Yes, your experiences, the ones that you're sharing now, they're smaller than Bacchanal, right? And they still work. That's the idea here. Scaling, right? The idea that you can have something that works in one environment work in a different size environment is totally great. Never discount your experiences, right? Like, speak up when you have ideas like this. This is another part of leadership, right? Is getting your ideas out there, inviting people to share their ideas as well, right? It's never
And
a bad
another
idea.
thing,
They're just different
like,
ideas that are applied to different times. Go ahead. Go ahead,
yeah.
Liz.
And like another thing that they could do, like for example, like during the holiday season, especially at Miss Mary Bobo's, like they'll bake like apple pies and they'll do pumpkin pies, and they sell those. Obviously, like they'll mark the cost up on it and they'll sell them to people, and that generates a lot more revenue for them as well. Selling those like special items, or even, you know, a lot of places that you can go and you can buy chicken, or you can buy dressing, or you can buy, you know, whatever. And if this restaurant wanted to increase their revenue, they could offer like those meals that people could take home and charge a little bit more, because a lot of places now, especially after the pandemic, if you go to like a buffet, especially, they weigh it now, and they're making more money off of that through the weight versus if you were to come inside and eat.
Right.
So,
Right. You know, I could increase the
that way
units
as
sold
well.
by saying that I'm no longer limited by the number of covers I can serve, right? I'm no longer limited by the tables or the seats, right? Instead, it's just about a continuous flow. Get it in your container, head out. Yeah, that's another way. That's another way to change process, right? That's a good one. You're definitely going to increase units sold that way too. All right. Would anyone else like to share something from here? If you would, go ahead and just take yourself off mute and talk about it. I'll give you a countdown. 3, 2, 1. All right. Well, here is one of the processes that we implemented to increase revenue here. This is back in 2018. Back in 2018, we had 2 meal periods. We had brunch and we had dinner. Brunch ran from 8 a.m. to 3 p.m. and dinner ran from 3 p.m. to 10 p.m. And the chart here down here is showing in blue the brunch period, how many covers we had, how many covers would come into the buffet during that particular hour here, right? So you can see that during the brunch period, they spike at 11 and 12. So pretty much from 11 to 1 o'clock is when most of your people are coming in. And then from dinner 3 to 9 o'clock, you get this spike, 5 o'clock, 6 o'clock, 7 o'clock. And back in 2018, we had one defined price for brunch and one defined price for dinner. So brunch was at X and dinner was at Y. Y was greater than X in this part, right? Okay. Now, building on what you were saying, Liz, Rosemary, Sloan, Gina, all of you were talking about different offerings, right? So different items that can go out. Well, what we realized was that the offerings that we had during brunch from 8 until 3 o'clock were not all the same. We were actually putting out different items at around, I think it was around 11 o'clock, 10 or 11 o'clock. We were starting to, maybe put out fewer waffles and put out more proteins, right? The pancakes were going away and the prime rib was coming out, right? Higher cost item. And generally an item that generates more demand too, right? So we thought to ourselves, if the offerings are different across the meal periods here, then that means that the value proposition is also different for the guest. So we tested something. In 2019, we broke out the brunch period to have breakfast before it too. All right. So breakfast became the period from 7 to 11, brunch from 11 to 3, and dinner from 3 to 10. Breakfast stayed at the X, which is what the brunch price was before. We wanted to test to see if people were willing to pay more at a different time, and it turns out they were. We changed the brunch pricing to be the X amount of dollars plus 5, right? And if you compare this chart, the average cover count over the course of the day, compared to what it was when we only had brunch and dinner at X and Y and no X plus 5, the covers really didn't change, but the average check did. So in that sense, we were able to generate more revenue from the guests simply by talking about when the different meal periods were. It also meant that if someone wasn't willing to pay the X plus 5 for brunch, they still had another option for breakfast. So in that way, the people who are willing to pay more were coming during a higher demand period compared to the people who are only willing to pay X instead, right? So these people who are coming at 7 o'clock, 8 o'clock, 9 o'clock, they're willing to pay X, not X plus 5 for the most part, right? Make sense of how we did this? Should, right? It's price, it's increasing price, right? Okay. All right. So to be able to execute on this, this was an idea that we had within revenue management. It was in response to a goal the food and beverage team had, which was, we are running at near capacity at Bacchanal. We don't think we can increase the number of people that were coming through, the units sold. So what can we do to increase revenue? Well, get your pricing hat on and figure out where is the value proposition for the guests and execute against that. And we did, and it turned out that we ended up generating, I think it was about $750,000 in the first quarter or so, which is total profit at that point, right? Because there's no additional expense and there was no capital put into it. It was a success. So we gained some credibility with the food and beverage team by saying, we're not going to interrupt your operations at here. We're going to test something because we think there is a greater amount of revenue associated here. It worked because our goals were aligned. The food and beverage team wanted to generate more revenue. We wanted to figure out how to leverage space and time there to increase total property EBITDA, and we did it. So that is an example of two teams working together, having common goals, testing something, and it worked out great. Good stuff, right? I like it, at least. It's nerd stuff. Okay, so there's one example. Let's get into another example here. So moving out of a buffet sort of restaurant operation and moving into a sit-down environment here, a fancy sit-down environment here too. All right. Nobu restaurant. So the Nobu restaurant that we have at Caesar's Palace in Las Vegas is the world's largest Nobu. We have over 11,000 square feet of space on the dining room floor. And we've got a sushi bar. We have private dining rooms. We have a teppanyaki experience, and we have chef's table experiences too. So whole bunch of wonderful offerings here at Nobu. And here was another area where we had our revenue management hats on. We were looking at data and seeing that we're full a lot of the time over at Nobu. We can't take more people in. The demand, we can never seem to meet the demand here. There are parties that are just on wait lists that we can't accommodate. And we wanted to figure out how can we use our revenue management brains as it pertains to thinking about space and time to help the food and beverage team accommodate all the demand that they're seeing at the restaurant. Clear on what that question is? If it's not clear, just say, James, that's not clear. You're speaking gibberish. Help me out here. We're good? Okay. Normally I speak in gibberish. So I'm surprised this is going over so well. All right. Okay. So put this out to you. If you were given the opportunity to design or to redesign a restaurant, what factors would you consider to maximize revenue opportunities? So a different environment now, no longer in a buffet. We're in an environment where people are making reservations. We're in an environment here where people are going to pay a lot for this experience too. So what are some of the things that what are some of the factors that are in your mind when it comes to restaurant design here? What are you going to do? What are you going to do to maximize revenue? We'll open it up for discussion. Just take yourself off mute and share some of your ideas. Heather, what are you thinking? Heather Whitaker, you're concentrating, you're contemplating, you've got ideas happening in your head. Talk us through what you're thinking.
Let me see. I personally would think as long as you focus on your customer and who like your ideal target customer is and what they're going to expect when they enter, and that you know kind of what they would want when they come in, that you would be able to use that. So whether you wanted to use surveys to ask people in that particular area, I think just thinking about your customer would be a good idea, because younger generations are going to want a different feel compared to someone who's more like in the retirement stage. So.
Okay. All right. Heather, you just brought up a great idea, which is the idea of knowing your customer, right? This is something that we talked about at the beginning too, as it pertained to leadership, right? Understand what someone else's goals are, share what your goals are, find the overlap and work together on it. Absolutely. Absolutely. Now, Heather, I'm going to ask one more question of you. All right. Here it is. Do people generally come into restaurants by themselves?
I wouldn't think so. I mean, some people do. I don't personally. So no, I would say no.
Yeah, there's usually a party, right?
Mhm.
A party of 2, a party of 4, a party of whatever it might be. Okay. All right. All right.
Mhm.
All right. Know your customer, know that stuff. Okay. I agree with what you're saying. Thank you for that, Heather. Ainsley, let's go over to you. Ainsley, what are you thinking here? You've got your magic wand. You can do anything that you want in the restaurant here to figure out, or you can do anything that you can to increase EBITDA. Where are you going to start?
The thing that came to my mind was utilizing the space.
Bingo. Keep going.
Uh, mm, well, you have parties of customers coming in, so you want to make sure you want as much room in your restaurant to be covered.
Yes, yes, yes. Ainsley, keep going here. Party size, tables. Keep going down this path with it. Keep going. You're so close. Go another layer to it.
So utilizing space.
All right, this is good. Well, how about we go to someone else to continue building on this?
I think sorry, go ahead.
I think having like a large area for like designated just for large parties, because a lot of places don't offer, you know, that kind of accommodation for parties of like 10 or 15 or 20 even, you know. So just having a room designated for parties.
Sure,
Also,
sure.
maybe change the table mix if you see certain percentages of the customers coming in certain size party groups to then try to match that with the table sizes.
Oh, who just said that? Whoever said that is not on video, so I can't see
That's
you. I
me.
don't know your name. Who was it?
Rosemary.
Rosemary? Rosemary, Rosemary, Rosemary. That is one of the things that we're, don't show that slide yet. Okay. Yes, Rosemary, we're going to continue down that part. And Ainsley, thank you for getting us there too. So yes, what you were talking about, good points. Restaurant designers typically design outlets to get as many seats in as possible, right? But if you want to get as many seats in as possible, you would just put chair, 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 kind of like at Panera, right? Who was it that worked at Panera on here?
Also me.
Oh, it was you too. Okay, all right, all right. Chick-fil-A for Liz, right? You want to get as many people in, chair, 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 chair. Just set it up like a theater. You can pack them in, right? But people in restaurants generally don't come in as single diners. They come in with a party, 2 people, 4 people, whatever it might be, right? Not every table can accommodate that same size party. So here's what we did. We took a look at, come back. We took a look at the size of the parties, right? So the size is in the first column, 1 to 2, 3 to 4, 5 to 6, 7 to 8, or 9 plus. Then we looked at during our busiest times, when every table was booked, what size parties were we accommodating? So we found out that 62% of the parties coming in were 1 or 2 people. 24% were 3 or 4. 8% were 5 or 6, 3% were 7 or 8, and 9 plus were 3%. Okay. So that's your demand. Those are the people who want to come into your restaurant in that size of a group. Okay. Let's get back into what someone else was saying. The idea of like having specific rooms for large parties, right? It's like, well, if the demand is there, absolutely go for it, right? When we looked at the table mix in the restaurant, look what we found. The table mix was set up to be 24% parties of 1, 2, 43% parties of 3, 4, 17% parties of 5, 6, 3% for 7, 8, and 8% of 9 plus. Look at that disconnect for parties of 1 and 2 and 3 and 4, right? 62% of the demand was for parties of 1 or 2. Only 24% of our inventory was set up for that. 24% of our demand was for parties of 3 to 4. 43% of our tables were set up like that, right? No wonder we weren't able to accommodate all of the parties that were coming in. We weren't ready for them, right? With 62% being a 1 or a 2, we're gonna seat that party at a table for 4, right? There are going to be 4 seats at that table, but only 2 of them are going to be occupied. So we're losing out on the opportunity of having 2 empty seats there. Make sense? Right? This is all about how to manage the space associated with it. All right. So we looked at, we graphed all of that out on this chart for the management team and said, let's consider rearranging the tables here so we can accommodate parties of the right size. And you'll see that on the chart, there are 3 bars on there. 1 was the current mix, 2 was the optimal table mix, which would be the demand size. And then the 3rd one is what we recommended. Now, we didn't recommend the optimal mix. The reason why we did not recommend the optimal mix is because we would have lost too many seats, right? Because if we converted all of those 4 tops into 2s, our seat count would have diminished. And remember, this was the optimal mix is for when you're at your peak demand, right? So our cover count or our seats would have decreased, so our count would have decreased too. That wouldn't be using the space in the best way possible. So there's a little bit of change between what's recommended and what's optimal here. But that's what we did. There was also no capital investment on this project either, because it was simply finding tables that would work in the restaurants and putting them there so that we could accommodate the party sizes. And what happened is that the wait times decreased, the amount of covers increased, therefore we increased the units sold, and that's how revenue was increased here at Nobu. Again, just by looking at data and figuring out what does the math say is the right option here. Two parties, revenue management and restaurant operations, sitting down to say, how can we find a solution here? Let's bring in our expertise together, the areas that we're subject matter experts on, and we'll find a way forward here. And that's exactly what we did. So the next area where we concentrated was not in restaurants. It's instead in our pool areas. Okay, so we wanted to take a look at our pools, our cabanas, and our day beds, because there was thought that this is an under leveraged, that this is in fact an under leveraged asset. All right. So back in 2017, this is before revenue management was involved with the pools at all. The inventory, meaning the day beds and the cabanas and even the pool chairs, were priced flat. Didn't matter when you were coming in, didn't matter when you booked it. It was the same price for everyone, did not vary. Flat pricing, also called static pricing, not dynamic, static, stays the same, static, right? So in 2018, there was a gentleman hired to price the cabanas and the day beds. Revenue management wasn't really involved yet. Instead, there was a person who was just looking at the pricing. His name is Derek. He's still with the company now. And just in 2018 alone, compared to 2017, he found another $241,000 worth of revenue just by varying pricing a little bit, right? There wasn't really any analysis going on, nothing like you saw with the table mix optimization for the Nobu project. Instead, it was just looking at pricing here. So 2018 versus 2017, no real math behind it yet. 2019, I got involved with it, and we brought Derek onto the RM side, and we taught him all about revenue management, and he started to price the pools and forecast what demand looked like. All right. And we ran the stats and everything, and it was a lot of fun. So let me ask you this. If you were trying to predict what the customer demand would look like for a pool, what factors would you look at for that? What do you think are some of the influencing factors for people when they determine if a cabana or a day bed is the right sort of experience for them? We'll open up for discussion. Just take yourself off mute and share it with us, please. What makes you want to go to a pool? And start from there.
If it's hot outside.
If it's hot outside. All right, Sloan, now put that into a variable. Like, how do we measure whether it's hot?
What time of day is it?
Time of day, temperature. Yeah, time of day and temperature could influence the demand for the pool. Absolutely. Great. What else? Temperature, time of day. What else could happen here? Anyone can join in at this point.
Time of year. Like if for instance, if you're like, call it like us college students, if we're out for the summer, is that something that we want to do with our friends or that sort of thing? Or if it's like family oriented, if they go on like vacation, do they want to go to a pool? Or even like if their friend has a pool, a lot of weekend people do that.
Sure. Yeah. Time of year. Probably people are going to want to use the pool more in June than in January. Yeah, that could influence it too. We've got temperature, we've got time of year, we've got time of day. What else? What else could be a factor in there?
Well, you also have the day of the week too, like weekends versus weekdays.
Okay, and what do you think you would see if you looked at day of week, Rosemary?
It'd be probably busier on the weekends.
Probably busier on the weekends. Okay, Yes. All right. We are also in a casino, hotel, resort environment here, right? What else could be going on? Could there be factors that are going on at the property that would affect guests' willingness to come use the pool or desire to? What do we think about that? If we have Celine Dion performing in the Coliseum, or we have Brooks and Dunn performing in the Coliseum, do you think that those factors are going to influence the demand for the pool? Okay, seeing some nods of yes here. So for those of you, go ahead, Liz, go ahead.
Most definitely. Like if it's someone that we want to see, obviously it's going to attract a lot more people to that area.
There you go. Yeah, and there might be even differences among the crowds that Celine Dion used to attract versus who Usher attracts today, right? They're going to be different, right? Yes. So all of these factors we hypothesized to be variables that were having an impact on the amount of people that wanted to come to the pool, the demands. All right. So we did some analysis here, some regression, some good old math and modeling, and we thought of so many variables. The ones that you brought up, absolutely. And then we got deeper into it and said, maybe it's the type of guest who is staying in the hotel that's influencing what's going on here. So we thought about, well, if these are high worth casino guests, what happens? Or if these are low worth casino guests, what happens? If they're all people who are in town for conventions, what happens here, right? We wanted to look at all those factors because if we can model what the demand is, we can get good pricing out there too, appropriate pricing to maximize revenue. So what we found for the pool over at Caesar's Palace was that there were 5 factors, 5 variables that really influenced the demand, and they were, you guys hit some of them. High temperatures. So high temperatures were a good predictor of demand, meaning that the higher the temperature, up to a point, the higher the demand for the pool. We found that leisure guests, this FIT room nights, so leisure room nights, the number of leisure guests that were in the property at any given time, they were also positively associated with increased demand. VIP guests were associated with increased demand. They moved together. As one increased, so did the other. The month was a big factor here too. May is not as in high demand as August, and day of week, same thing, weekdays versus weekends. All these factors together allowed us to predict what the demand was going to be on any given day. So we take this information to our colleagues in pool operations and say, great news. We can now predict when demand is going to be high and when it is going to be low. Based on knowing that, we can price appropriately to get an optimized amount of revenue coming into the property. Making sense? This is all clicking, right? Okay. All right, great. So just by doing these forecasts and understanding when demand would be high versus when it would be low, in 2019, we ended up bringing in another $930,000 compared to 18. We got better at it in 2020. We went to more of the pools and we found another $500,000 in 2020, the year when just about everything was shut down. We still found a way to improve on the years that had been in the past, just by doing the math and working with our colleagues and saying the math indicates that there is a substantial opportunity here. Okay, and that was a lot of fun to do. So we continue to grow across all these areas, and it's just by doing math. In 2021, we're actually now at the point where compared to 2019, we're nearly $6 million up. And this is from no capital investment, only on working through the math and going where the math leads and sharing that information with all of our colleagues. It's been a lot of fun, and we only have a little bit of time left. So what else can I do for you? What else would you like to know here in the time that we have remaining together? I think this is the right time for questions, right, Professor? Oh, she might be on mute, and that's okay. So how can I help all of you? What would you like to ask? James, you seem really passionate about this. How did that happen? James, your skin is really clear. How do you maintain such radiant beauty? It's all up for game. Here, go for it. Rosemary, you took yourself off mute. Bring it on.
Would you mind sending your email address in the chat in case we come up with any questions afterwards?
You got it. Yes, to everyone. There you go. What else you got?
So I know we only have a couple minutes left. Why don't we end with this? James, can you tell us a little bit about your path that led you here and how that worked out for you?
Sure, I'd be happy to do that. So I started out in hospitality at a private club in New York. It was the Yale Club of New York City. And I was answering phones. I was answering phones and taking reservations. I was taking reservations for dining, and I was doing some event planning as well. And what I realized through that process was that I really like the magic that can be created in hospitality. So I thought, when Disney, the Imagineers, want to create magic, they turn to math and engineering. So I bet there's something I can do within hospitality here. So I decided to go back to school to study the quantitative side of the business through the magic of analytics. And once I started to get into analytics and was able to model these different environments out there, it became immediately apparent that there were very few people operating in hospitality and even in revenue management that were really looking at math and allowing the math to guide the decisions toward maximizing total property EBITDA or whatever it is the goal was. So by being rigorous and talking about rigor and analysis constantly to anyone who would listen to me, eventually some like-minded people, we all find each other. We find out that we have similar goals. And we say, well, we're here at this company together. What can we do for the organization that is in line with our interests and the company's goals? That's how these sorts of projects with the restaurants start. That's how this project with the cabanas expanded from just being at Caesars in Las Vegas to all of them across the enterprise. That's how we built credibility with the rest of the team to apply these principles to the sports books, to the spas, to all of these other areas by looking at total contribution from guests, going where the math tells us to go, never asking for capital either, never asking for money, just saying, let us apply what we think is going to work here. If it doesn't work, we will stop. Here's how we'll know if it works. We're going to do tests. The math doesn't lie, and we will be transparent with you every step of the way. We became geeks who can speak. We became quantitative math people who turn that information or who turn that data into information and implementable practices with our colleagues who are in marketing and operations. It's that symbiotic relationship that allows us to continue to grow.
Awesome. I think that's a perfect way to end this. Thank you so much for your time, James. That was wonderful. I love it. And for those of you who are in the capstone class, James is like the introduction to everything we're going to do for the next couple of weeks. So that was awesome. We're going to be talking about scientific management, revenue management, demand management, pricing, your marketing plan, how it all integrates together. And that's the next part of your project. So, James is the person to hit up if you have more questions too.
Can I say one more thing?
Yeah, of course.
Okay, whatever you learn in the capstone course, actually apply it in your job. When you work, whatever you're doing, because so few people do it. It's incredible. They just get sucked into doing tasks instead of using the processes that they learn that are tried and true and work scientifically. Just do it, please, 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 please.
I
Okay.
love
Thank
the
you,
shout out.
Jane.
It's great. Thank you so much, James. We appreciate it.
My pleasure. Bye, everyone.
Bye.
Thank you.